Chapter 4. Exercise Metabolism. Timing, energy use, and control. What are the steps that occur going from rest to exercise back to rest? How do we know what's happening inside the body? External indicators. How are the energy demands supplied in the time necessary? What are the limitations that prevent us all from being world record holders? Fuel during exercise limited or unlimited? Can we add more? How do we get access? Sources of fuel during exercise. Carbohydrate, blood glucose, muscle glycogen, fat, plasma FFA, from adipose tissue lipolysis, intramuscular triglycerides, protein. Only a small contribution to total energy production, only 2%, may increase to 5 to 15% late in prolonged exercise. Blood lactate, gluconeogenesis via the Cori cycle. Estimation of fuel utilization during exercise. First, need to understand oxygen uptake. Oxygen uptake. Ventilation versus respiration. Oxygen uptake. Ventilation, moving air into and out of the lungs, breathing. Stimulated by CO2 in the blood. Air exhaled from the lungs is missing some oxygen and has new CO2 added. Oxygen uptake. Respiration, movement of gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide. Pulmonary, lungs to blood, blood to lungs. Cellular, blood to tissues, tissues to blood. Tied to metabolism. O2 needed for metabolism. CO2 made from metabolism. Oxygen uptake. VO2, rate volume of oxygen used by the body each minute. Absolute units equals liters per minute. Relative units equals ml/kg per minute. VCO2, rate volume of carbon dioxide produced by the body each minute. VA, rate volume of air exhaled each minute. Absolute units equals liters/minute. Estimation of fuel utilization during exercise. During steady-state exercise, VCO2 and VO2 reflective of O2 consumption and CO2 production at the cellular level. Estimation of fuel utilization during exercise. Respiratory exchange ratio, RA or R. RA equals VCO2. VO2 indicates fuel utilization. 0.70 equals 100% fat. 0.85 equals 50% fat, 50% CHO. 1.00 equals 100% CHO. Estimation of fuel utilization during exercise. Fat oxidation, metabolism. C16H32O2 plus 23O2 16CO2 plus 16H2O. RA equals VCO2, VO2 equals 16CO2, 23O2 equals 0.70. Estimation of fuel utilization during exercise. Glucose oxidation, metabolism. C6H12O6 plus 6O2 6CO2 plus 6H2O. RA equals VCO2, VO2 equals 6CO2, 6O2 equals 1.0. Exercise intensity and fuel selection. Low intensity exercise, less than 30% VO2 max. Fats are primary fuel. High intensity exercise, greater than 70% VO2 max. CHO are primary fuel. Effective exercise intensity on muscle fuel source. Exercise intensity and fuel selection. Crossover concept. Describes the shift from fat to CHO metabolism as exercise intensity increases. Due to recruitment of muscle fibers that need fuel quickly. Increasing blood levels of epinephrine that stimulates glycogenolysis. Illustration of the crossover concept. Exercise duration and fuel selection. During prolonged exercise there is a shift from CHO metabolism toward fat metabolism. Increased rate of lipolysis. breakdown of triglycerides into glycerol and free fatty acids, FFA. Stimulated by rising blood levels of epinephrine. Shift from CHO to fat metabolism during prolonged exercise. Interaction of fat and CHO metabolism during exercise. It is not all one or all the other. Carbohydrate is a key material. Carbohydrate is the brain's fuel source. Run low equals physical fatigue. Run low equals mental stress, BONK. Interaction of fat and CHO metabolism during exercise. Some carbohydrate must be present in order for fat to be metabolized. Physiologic strategy: do what is necessary to spare carbohydrate. Interaction of fat and CHO metabolism during exercise. Fat burns in the flame of carbohydrates. When glycogen is depleted during prolonged high-intensity exercise. Reduced rate of glycolysis and production of pyruvate. Reduced Krebs cycle intermediates. Reduced fat oxidation. Fats are metabolized by Krebs cycle. Effective exercise duration on muscle fuel source. Rest to exercise transitions. Light switch and energy example. Rest to exercise transitions. Oxygen uptake increases. Reaches steady state within 1 to 4 minutes. Oxygen deficit. Lag in oxygen uptake at the beginning of exercise. Suggests anaerobic pathways contribute to total ATP production. After reaching steady state, ATP requirement is met primarily aerobically. The oxygen deficit. Recovery from exercise, metabolic responses. EPOC, formerly known as oxygen debt. Excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. Elevated VO2 for several minutes immediately following exercise. Aerobic metabolism provides the energy to recycle ADP to ATP. Recovery from exercise, metabolic responses. Fast portion of EPOC. Resynthesis of stored PC. Replacing muscle and blood O2 stores. Recovery from exercise, metabolic responses. Slow portion of EPOC. Elevated body temperature and catecholamines. Conversion of lactic acid to glucose, Cori cycle, gluconeogenesis, oxygen deficit and debt during light, moderate and heavy exercise. Metabolic response to exercise, incremental exercise. Equals incremental increase in intensity. Metabolic response to exercise, incremental exercise. Oxygen uptake increases linearly until VO2 max is reached. No further increase in VO2 with increasing work rate. Changes in oxygen uptake with incremental exercise. Fate of lactate: where does it go? During anaerobic metabolism. During aerobic metabolism. After exercise. Fate of lactate: anaerobic metabolism. Lactate can stay in the cell and build up. Hydrogens inhibit PFK, slow glycolysis. Fatigue and discomfort. Decreased performance. Lactate can leave the cell and go into the blood. Measurable in millimoles per liter/liter. Lactate can be used by aerobic cells, reconvert to pyruvate, etc. Lactate threshold. The point at which blood lactic acid suddenly rises during incremental exercise. Also called the anaerobic threshold. Also called OBLA, onset of blood lactic acid. Mechanisms to explain the lactate threshold. Lactate threshold: practical use as a marker of exercise intensity. High intensity needs anaerobic metab equals OBLA. The intensity cannot last for long. Inhibit PFK with lactic acid, high intensity. Run out of glycogen/glucose, high intent, plus duration. Lactate threshold: practical uses in prediction of performance. High threshold compared to max capacity equals ability to remain at low intensity when others might be at high intensity. X. Top marathoners remain aerobic while running faster than 5 minutes/mile. Identification of the lactate threshold. Other mechanisms for the lactate threshold. Failure of the mitochondrial hydrogen shuttle to keep pace with glycolysis. Excess NAD in sarcoplasm favors conversion of pyruvic acid to lactic acid. Type of LDH. Enzyme that converts pyruvic acid to lactic acid. LDH in fast-twitch muscle fibers favors formation of lactic acid. Effect of hydrogen shuttle and LDH on lactate threshold. Questions: can lactate be removed faster? What does training do to OBLA, lactate threshold? Where does the lactate ultimately go? Removal of lactic acid following exercise. Training effect on OBLA. Endurance training. Grow more mitochondria. Use aerobic metab to supply ATP at higher intensities, less lactate produced. More places for lactate to go. Greater and thus faster LA removal, use. The Cori cycle, lactate as a fuel source. Lactate as fuel for the heart. Heart is the ultimate aerobic muscle. Converts lactate to pyruvate easily. LDH in slow-twitch muscle fibers favors formation of pyruvate. Makes ATP through aerobic metabolism with pyruvate as the substrate, fat as fuel. Why is fat an economical fuel source? Comparing CHO and fat: 1 gram of CHO equals 4 kilocalories, 1 gram of fat equals 9 kilocalories. 1 gram of CHO needs 3 grams H2O for storage. 1 gram of fat equals 9 kilocalories. 1 gram of fat needs no H2O for storage. So the energy equivalent of CHO and 1 gram of fat requires 2 grams CHO and 6 grams H2O. This is 8 grams of weight. So, to gain the energy equivalent of 1 pound of fat, it would take 2 pounds CHO plus 6 pounds H2O equals 8 total pound of weight. So, a 5 pounds fat gain would equal a 40 pounds CHO gain. 1. Wow. 2. Energy efficient. Note: too much of a good thing is never good, however. Questions?